And friends, we are rolling. And friend, as you're listening, you don't know this just happened, but I had to excuse myself from my co-host and my guest because I had to sneeze. Not a big deal. But
so cute.
No, my sneezes are not cute. That's the point. I feel like most girls, most women have these cute little sneezes, and Liz is totally a cute sneezer. It's like, achoo, like, chew. Mine are full body, scare the dog, terrify the cat, terrifying events. It's like it takes my whole body and it's like my whole soul is exiting myself. And that's my sneeze.
In my defense, I will say mine are tiny, but there's about 7 to a 9 at like one time that come. So they have to be tiny. Otherwise, they like intrude in the moment. It is my biggest fear is to start sneezing mid like announcements or like at a church conference because I'm like, well, here's 30 seconds of our time.
Yeah,
gone.
just wasted.
Okay.
Yes. I know. My little sister used to have a little sneeze that literally went, chew, chew. And I was like,
it's
like, how are you doing anything? Yeah. I'm sort of a mid sneezer. Like, it's not like a whole thing.
Okay.
But I do tend to sneeze in sets of 3. So
Okay.
I would take 3.
So maybe what you're saying is like I get all of mine out at once.
Yes.
Yeah, you just have one big one. You only
Go
need
big and
one.
done.
The rest of us need we got to warm up to it, I guess.
I've trained myself on how to sneeze because I'm like, otherwise this is a production. So it's like a mental state I go into.
Yeah. Well, I've tried to do that. I've actually tried as I'm getting ready to sneeze. And I literally just did that moments ago. Although, friend, you couldn't see that. I did that moments ago. I was like, try to sneeze small, try to sneeze. No. It's like the whole room is filled with the echoes of my sneeze. And it woke my dog up.
We're glad you survived.
I am too. And friend, we are glad you're here. Thank you so much for listening to and watching this episode of Honestly Though, where it's all about real talk, real life, real faith. Honestly Though exists to have faith conversations for life transformation. I'm Rebecca Carrell.
And I'm Liz Rodriguez, and joining us today is Kate Boyd. Kate is the author of An Untidy Faith and founder the Remember Table. She guides those leaving toxic church environments to reconstruct faith towards wholeness by equipping people to break free from fundamentalist mindsets, reconstructing their faith with nuance and integrity, and to trust their own spiritual discernment. Kate holds a master's in theological studies from Perkins School of Theology. Kate, we're glad you're here with your mid-level sneezes. We're just glad to be in the conversation. How are you today?
Good. Yeah, I feel like we're all I don't know, what is it, the 3 bears and Goldilocks? Like, we've got the little, we've got the medium, we've got the big, we've got a full set. So I'm glad to be here to complete you today.
And honor of honors, Kate, you are our first ever video podcast guest. And I feel like I need to call attention to that because, friend, if you've only ever listened to us on audio, which is actually all you could ever do because we've stubbornly insisted on remaining an audio-only podcast, you can now find us on YouTube. Our channel is Honestly Though, the podcast. There's an underscore in there somewhere, but you'll find us in search. And so if you want to look at our mugs, you can. We are now up on YouTube.
I don't know if everyone's going to count it an honor to be our first video, but you're looking great. So
thank you.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
I
did get myself together this morning, so I'm really glad that I did.
I genuinely forgot we were videoing, and I'm not really convinced I brushed my hair, but I'm here.
And you look fabulous.
That's why we're here today.
But you know what? I think it actually works well for the conversation that we're having. So.
Yes.
And speaking of that, okay. So Liz, I'm Substacking now. I feel like I've taken a big adulting step. That feels like the next level of blogging. So I'm on Substack now. I'm not very active, but I'm there. But Kate, I saw your post or your is it still called a blog?
I don't know. I never know what to call them. I'm like my piece, my post, my article. Like, I don't know. I sort of rotate. So I don't know that I guess maybe it's a newsletter. It works for me.
That works, but I'm
not the arbiter of what goes on Substack. So
Well, you did write a fabulous article on aging, and you didn't take the typical angle that I thought you would. You took a
Mm.
different viewpoint, and I thought it was just fascinating because when we talk about aging, typically we talk about how aging is a $77 billion industry, and by 2030, I think that's supposed to double, and how we're all in this race to stay as young as we possibly can, and we attach our worth to our appearance and all those things. And that is not the angle you took. Will you tell us, give us the title of the article and then tell us a little bit about your motive for writing it?
Yeah, so it's called The Danger of Aging Women. And I definitely think that all of those cultural forces play into all of this. I really started thinking about this. I turned 40 last year, um, which is, I don't know, like a major milestone, I guess. I don't feel much different.
It's a milestone.
I actually quite enjoy my 40s so far. So far, it's like really great. And I was sort of reflecting on like why people don't look forward to aging or don't look forward to their 40s. When I'm like, this is the best I've ever felt in my life. Why is 40 supposed to have been so scary? What is it about my life that's ending now that I have like passed, out of the first 3 decades of my life? And I've been thinking a lot about like, capitalism and consumerism. So I think all of this works together. But I think all of that then, when you were saying, you even said, that we put our worth in our youth. And I was like, well, what makes youth valuable is really the question, right? And I think if you look at sort of the systems of the world, valuable women, younger women are valuable either for their inexperience, because they are more easily consumable themselves, or for their compliance. And I think that sort of overlaps with some of the ideas around the abuse we've seen in churches and in society, and it underscores and sort of upholds and then created the structure around it. Like, yes, there's money involved and people are making a lot of money off of making us feel old and trying to stay young. But why is it that the beauty standard was youth in the first place? And what is it about women being younger that makes them valuable? And that was sort of where I started and what sort of led me down this rabbit hole to end up where I ended up.
Boy, those are some really compelling questions, and they are not questions I had ever considered. And I will tell you, first of all, welcome to the 40s. I'm no longer there, but I thoroughly enjoyed my 40s, and I felt like 40s were the decade of greater credibility. And
Mm-hmm.
as I've entered into 50, I've felt like even more so greater credibility, although I have started to have aging anxiety. I'll just be super open
Sure.
about that. Probably 50% of my friends have started doing plastic and cosmetic procedures to reduce the effects of aging. And I have not. I'm not casting judgment on it, but I just have not done that. And I feel it. I feel the tension of, gosh, I look in the mirror and I don't look like what I used to look like. And I look at pictures of myself and I see things that didn't used to be there. And I don't love it. So, yeah.
Yeah. I have about like 6, 7, 8 more months in my 30s. So I turned 40 in 26, which will be like really fun. But I was at a young adult conference with the church I'm on staff at earlier this year. And so, you're there technically as a chaperone. I don't know, like they're all above 18. So you're a leader, definitely. And it was the first time for me where it was very clear that I am not 24, because in my head,
Right.
I'm for sure 27. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
it's fine. Oh, we're going wide leg jeans. Perfect. I'll transition. Like, I'm here. And then they were just like up all night and up really early. And one evening, I was like, I have to go to bed. Like, to hold a genuine conversation tomorrow morning, I need sleep. But I am like you, Kate, and Rebecca, like, I'm looking forward to this year. I feel like for the first time, some of my words actually come with weight, because you're like, oh, I've been in ministry now for like almost a decade, and I've seen things and been on staff at churches, and I'm no longer talking from a place of lack of experience, but I'm speaking from a place of, oh, let's try it again because it's been a few years, or, just a different
Mm-hmm.
perspective. But sometimes it doesn't always appear to be valued, which is interesting, because I would have thought it would have been the opposite. And so it has been an interesting kind of nuance to work through this like aging and maturity, if you will, that comes with time.
Yeah. So, Kate, in the subtitle, I think it's either the subtitle or the little descriptor of your article, you mentioned Epstein, and that has just been in the news for well over a year. How does his case or his legacy relate to the anti-aging culture? But not only that, because you allude to this in your article too, but to the silencing of women's voices. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, people didn't go to Jeffrey Epstein for for access to any old kind of woman, right? They went specifically for very young, I won't even say young women, I will say girls. They went for girls, for children. And I have to think that it is part of, when you're that young, you don't necessarily know that what's happening to you is wrong. You don't necessarily have the experience or other experience that tells you this isn't how it's supposed to be. And you may not even have people in your life who are older who can define that for you because all the older people in your life are pushing you this way. And so I think that is really what's sort of connected here, in that with the anti-aging culture is sort of a way to signal either that we are inexperienced or that we are willing to be compliant with certain things, right? There is sort of a sense of all of the people in the current administration, the women have a particular look, and it's all very based on certain kinds of hairstyles, the amount of filler in their faces. And I think that too is to signal a desire, to a degree, to signal a desire to be a part of this group, to have your belonging contingent on that and the compliance of the things that they want you to do, or that your agreement with them. So in a way, the external connects to the signaling of what you're willing to do internally or with your actions. So I think there is sort of this connection of like, why do we do this? Why do we want to stay young? What does that signal to because it signals to other people. I think it makes us feel good too, but a lot of us don't ask the question of like, why does that make us feel good? Or why does society make this the thing to aspire to? And I mean, just like you guys were saying, we do have more credibility at this age. We do have more weight. We do have more experience, but it is not always valued. And in some ways, if we did sort of toe the line and maybe performed youth or even decided to be more compliant people, we might be taken more seriously in certain circles because we've demonstrated our willingness to go along with what it is. And so I think in a lot of ways, I don't think everyone is making these connections, right? I don't think that everyone who pursues anti-aging things is thinking about this, but I think we do need to ask ourselves the question of, again, why is this look? Why are these traits desirable in women? And what does that say about what people are looking for? And I think if you go to Epstein, it's that they desire youth. They desire people without credibility. They desire people who don't have the experience or the context to know what's wrong and who can't or won't speak about it.
Because youth can equate to easier to manipulate and maneuver.
Mm-hmm.
That is so troubling and true.
Yeah. Because even as you were talking, Kate, I was like flashing back to like the elementary school lunchroom where there was the table that you wanted to sit at least for me, I can speak from my experience, just always kind of stood out, never really blended in. But I knew, if I got this pair of pants or if I cut my hair this way, so that external, if I could make my outside look or represent a certain thing, that getting into that club or those cool kids or that lunch table might be achievable, which I joke that like most women are junior high girls just in like older bodies. And so you like multiply that times a lot, and it's what we're seeing now, because obviously the stakes are higher. The silencing of women is much different than just sitting at the cool kid table in the lunchroom in elementary school. But you're like, oh wait, if we're not even thinking about it, which you said a few times, like I don't even know if we're making the connection that some of our actions are kind of causing this ripple effect in society. And so I'm wondering too, like, how have you seen that silencing kind of play itself out over the last year or so?
So I do think it's interesting because I actually just wrote about silencing this week on my Substack too, that there is sort of this way of silence tends to be a cover in a lot of ways, right? So if you don't have enough data points, you can't make a pattern. And so keeping people silent, and I think we've seen this in a lot of church scandals, right? We don't hear that a pastor had an illicit affair or a moral failure or inappropriate behavior because they've been covering it up behind the scenes. Somebody had the information, but they weren't allowed to make it public because then everyone would know. Everyone would then be able to put the pattern together for themselves. And maybe something would have happened earlier, but quote unquote, look at the fruit, right? Look at all these amazing things that are happening. We can't take down this person because they're doing so much good in the world. And so I think if you have churches that have really strong hierarchy, especially with related to sex and gender, like men get to age and become distinguished. We don't. We age and become irrelevant, right? Like, and that's a very
I'm
big.
telling you,
it's very different. And so when you sort of combine all of these dynamics, like women don't get to speak, and when they do, if you have all of these in place, you're either too young or you're too old to be credible. And those of us in the middle, we're sort of troublesome, but they'll find a way to say that we're too old or we're too young, or we're trying to look young so they can be like on that side, or we're allowing ourselves to age at a natural rate, and therefore we look old and we're just jealous or we're angry, right? That we're not the ones who got attention or something. There's always some other reason, right? And so I think there's this sense of we keep silent because maybe we also think it's our own problem. I know that was sort of me. I didn't want to be a gossip. I didn't want to be a tattletale. Maybe it was just me and a personality clash. But that's because none of us had talked to each other, right? And this also keeps women competing with each other so that we don't talk to each other about certain things we're experiencing so that we can't establish a pattern for ourselves. So I think a lot of this goes hand in hand in that it doesn't just pit us against the evil deeds of people. It pits us against each other and who's going to be the best at protecting the status quo, who's going to be the one who gets to belong. And those are some base, like, the desire to belong is like a base desire. So if our desire to belong is contingent upon how much we'll participate in this thing or what we're willing to do in order to signal that, then it's going to keep a lot of people silent. And that then removes a lot of data points that people could be using to find a pattern of harm that exists. But it's either too long ago because we just finally got the credibility to be taken seriously. And so now we can talk about the thing that happened to us 5 years ago, but we're probably misremembering it because our memory is gone because we're old ladies now, right? Like there's always going to be a reason. And there's all of these dynamics that keep us competing with each other or for attention or for the best, the paragon of woman in that space. That competes with our desire to belong, but also our desire to protect and care. And that puts us in a really precarious position.
It does. Boy, I'll tell you, you both know I came out of the broadcasting world, and by God's grace, I worked in radio because my girlfriends in television, I mean, none of them are in it anymore. We're all 50 and older. And so, first of all, they had an earlier exit from the industry than I did because I got to be pretty anonymous behind a microphone without a camera. But the pressure in the broadcast world to stay looking young is extraordinary. Like you just can't even imagine it. And I'm so grateful that, being in academia, I think I am in literally the one remaining industry in the world where age actually does work in your favor. Like the only one left. But I've got this theory that everything we do is either forming us more into the image of Christ or malforming us into the image of the world. And you've given this some thought. So how do you see the anti-aging movement malforming us? Like, what is this doing? And I think you alluded to it a little bit, like we're competing with each other. We're, instead of aligning with each other, we're opposing each other. How do you see this having a malformative effect on us as women?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of that is true too, but even when I think about how long it takes me to get ready in the morning versus how long it takes my husband to get ready in the morning, you know, like
Oh
he
my
goes
gosh.
from bed to out the
Don't even
door in
talk to me.
20 minutes. And I'm like, I just got done with my shower and my skincare in 20 minutes. Does that count? You know what I mean? Like, I think there's even, like, if we think of like where our attention goes and how we spend our time, that there's a certain amount of this that, you know, we don't get as much time to spend in certain things because we have to, um, or feel compelled to show up in particular ways, or we need to show up in particular ways just to have a baseline of credibility or seriousness, to be, you know, presentable or civil. Um, and, and I even think the idea that our belonging is contingent on some of those things is malformative in and of itself, then we don't actually develop who we really are. We don't get to know who we really are. And we then don't get to find places in which that person is welcome and able to be their full selves. It's another way that a lot of us have to fragment ourselves in order to find belonging. And there are, obviously, community is a refining place. There are things about us that should shift and transform over time, but you shouldn't have to hide whole pieces of yourself to belong somewhere. And so, you know, if your belonging is contingent upon, like, I think, I don't know if you guys watch reality TV, but I've been watching The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. And they all look
My
the same.
daughter loves that show.
And they all
My
look the
daughter
same. You know what
loves
I
that
mean?
show.
And
Yeah.
so it's a signal that says, I know what you guys are about. I'm just like you. We have to sort of signal externally that we're willing to play the game in order to even get access to the field. And so I think in that way, it puts our attention on places that don't always get to develop more deeply or more fully because we're busy in the work of looking good and presentable, young, et cetera, et cetera.
What a line. Like, we're busy in the field of trying to look good. I was even just pondering my own like morning routine because I'm like, I need at least 45 minutes like that.
Yeah.
And that's just like a Monday.
That's for nothing. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. 45
So
minutes
true.
is like baseline,
Yes.
bare bones. Yeah.
Right. That's not the like, oh, I have to get a photo of myself taken or I'm going to be on a camera. That's awesome. Or even, I mean, on a lighter note, we took family photos over Christmas and I mean, I think me, my mom, and my sister were on the phone for like at least an hour because I live out of state. And so I was flying with mine and my mom's wardrobe. Like, her outfit came with me. And so to your point, I think if we did kind of calculate the time that we're taking, whether it's investing in the higher end stuff or even just in front of the mirror of our own homes, like, it is keeping us from the development of probably, like, on some level, even our spiritual lives. Because I'm like, oh, if I wake up with only 45 minutes till I need to leave, what I'm sacrificing is time with the Lord. Because what I'm going to probably inevitably do is take the full 45 minutes to get ready in the morning so that I can be presentable in the world around us, which probably right here just tells you I should reevaluate how I'm spending my mornings. But I just don't think I'm alone in that. That, like, when we wake up in the morning, we're sacrificing something.
I mean, I might know someone who had to cut her Bible study time short this morning to get ready for a podcast. I don't know. I mean, it's like, I don't know, but I might.
There's probably someone.
Yeah.
I'll also add that some of this is also a way of, like, I think there's a way of keeping women vulnerable by doing this financially even. There's a gal whose platform is Money with Katie, and she talks about something called the hot girl hamster wheel and just like how much money it actually takes. Like, if you're, say you dye your hair blonde, like how much time and how much money are you spending annually on upkeep with that? And you add to that all of the products that and all of the money you spend, all of the time you spend to upkeep this baseline, right? Or even to make it easy for you on a Monday morning to do 45 minutes. There's probably stuff that, you sort of have generally that makes it simple, right? But that also means that women are having to spend their money to do that, which also keeps them financially vulnerable sometimes too. And that can be vulnerable to different institutions, vulnerable in marriages of different kinds. Like, I think there's even ways in which it's not just malformative, but it is even practically tangibly harmful for women, because of these standards that we've set.
Sure. And if you have to sign a medical release, in order to keep up your appearance, the potential for harm is incredible. Someone is actually coming to my mind, as you said, the hot girl hamster wheel. And I go to a gym rather infrequently, but I try to go. And there's a girl there that I've seen more than once. And I mean, she is so fit. She could be on the cover of a fitness magazine, six pack abs, all of the things. Her hair is dyed blonde. She has fake eyelashes. She has fake nails. She has fillers. And I can't even imagine what that must cost a year. I know that Botox alone is upwards of like $500 or $600, a couple times a year. And so what a thought that it I'm just gonna have to sit on that for a little while, the hot girl hamster wheel. Yeah, boy, that makes me so sad actually,
Yeah.
because men just don't have to do any of that.
Mm-mm. No.
Yeah, and I know if you wanted a career in television, like if you wanted a career in television news, which you would not think that news reporters had to be glamorous. That is a utilitarian job. You are reporting the news, and yet, they do. And it's grown even more so over the past couple decades.
Well, and I think too, I mean, I remember when did my mom call? So I mean, some of our friends know this, but I'm on staff at a church. I'm one of the only I am currently in the season right now, the only female that does the announcements like on a Sunday morning. And at one point, my mom called, they watch online, and she very lovingly was like, "Hey, you gonna repeat an outfit anytime soon?" Like, and she had just noticed that I was like, where, and she wasn't wrong that I would be like, "Oh, it's my week to do the announcements, like, gotta look cute." And then I'd run to Target or run to a clothing boutique and to like, I mean, perform isn't hopefully the right word, but to like be presentable as what I had deemed like presentable of this position. And I mean, you would think the church would be this place where we would love wisdom and like yearn for the women who are further ahead, that aging would be kind of a positive. And instead, we even are seeing the effects inside the building as well. And so I think it'd be fun to hear from both of y'all of like how you're seeing this idea play into church culture as well.
I mean, yeah, I don't think perform is necessarily a bad word in the sense that like we all are performing to a degree. I think it's a natural tendency, a natural desire.
Sure.
And it comes out of all of these other things, right? But I think too, one of the things that I talk about in the article is that that makes women and aging women particularly dangerous is because they are sort of like the wisdom holders, the story holders. And even my husband was just talking about this because I was telling him last night about podcasts and what we're talking about today. He's like, "Did I ever tell you like the role of menopausal women before in like societies or culture?" He's like, "They were the ones who like, could look after the kids extra, sure, but they were the ones who like passed down wisdom and passed down the stories and were like the historians kind of." And I was like, that makes a lot of sense because that's kind of what I say too, is that aging women are considered dangerous precisely because they have all of the context of a place or a culture. And so I think there are ways in which that is honored. I think there are a lot of spaces in which like marriage and motherhood and life and grandmotherhood and all of these things in which women's insights are valued in most places. And then I think there are areas where maybe they are a little less valued, or they're valued but primarily based on their proximity to particular beliefs or people, or power structures. And all of those are not bad on their face, right? It's that those are the only ones that get priority. And part of that is that sort of willingness to comply, to toe the line, to be close to what people think of. And so I think this sort of silencing or the chasing of these other things, or um, the desire to be young or perform youth or be non-threatening and non-intimidating, um, works against the health of a lot of institutions and places and even churches, because it keeps women from speaking truthfully of their experiences, being able to be open about what they think or what questions they have or what they've been noticing. Um, but often they've been there the longest. They haven't been in the rooms with decisions, so they've been watching from everywhere. And I think in that way, a lot of this shows up with how few women are given the space to give their opinions, and their thoughts, or to share that context, and or for what context they are allowed to share, or what topics they are allowed to talk about or come together around. And yeah, so I think across all of these sort of topics we've been talking about, those are some of the ways in which I see it show up, culturally, but also particularly in church spaces.
Yeah. I mean, I think, Liz, to answer your question, one of the things I've seen just the most is the fight against anti-aging. And it was not, I'm not going to name names, but another friend of mine who's a Bible teacher, and she and I have pinky sworn that we would just age. So pray for me that I don't
I
break
love
the
it.
break the
Good
pinky
job.
swear. I won't, but yeah. Uh, um, we have chatted about how we are seeing our generation and women who are probably 10 years or so older than us, maybe 15 years older than us, how we've both noticed how they are starting to make some drastic changes to their appearance. And one woman in particular just literally broke my heart, because I thought, oh my goodness, you you are doing that. You are fighting this fight. I have looked up to you for 30 years, and it really did break my heart, because I thought if anyone could give us permission to age, it would be you, because she's relevant no matter what. The impact she's had on women worldwide has just been so profound. And so to see her kind of cave to this fight has broken my heart a little bit. And so I think that's where I see it. I think I just see just the women who could be leading the way and bravely just aging are not. And I wish they would, because I think if we would all just agree to age, we wouldn't look so old. We'd just look
We
normal,
just
you
look
know?
normal. And
Yeah.
I think too, we've sort of reached this place, and you'll see it sometimes, um, where we've kind of like normalized telling people what you've had done. Like there's been a lot of
Yes.
conversation, right? Like there was this time when someone asked like about a celebrity's breast augmentation, and she popped in the comments and told them exactly what she asked for her from her doctor, and like all of the level, and everyone's like, "Oh, hooray, let's normalize
Right.
plastic surgery, and like
Right.
sharing what we
Mm.
do and what looks good and what doesn't and what we like." And I was like, "Oh, no, we're kind of going the wrong direction." Without again interrogating why we want to look that way in the first place. And I think that's kind of where we are missing some of the like, to a degree, I am glad that in those spaces we are sort of championing a woman's ability to determine what she looks like. I think
Yes.
there is some of that like women need autonomy and agency, and to know that that's available to them. And so I don't want to remove that, but I want us to like really consider, if it's so heavily influenced by our society and our culture, is it actually us making the decision, or are we also being influenced? And maybe we can think critically too about why we're making the choices we're making. Doesn't say that you can't make them,
Right.
but make them knowing why you're doing it and what that looks like, and even why you want to look that way in the first place.
Well, a friend of mine dropped same friend, by the way, that I have pinky sworn with, but she dropped a bomb on me. She put out a little social media blurb promoting the book that she's just written about this. And she said that it's actually coveting. That when you are spending that amount of money and you are spending that amount of thought time on your appearance, what you're doing is you're coveting what someone else has, or you're coveting your former face, like your former self. And when she said that, honestly, that was like a punch in the soul, because I thought, you're right. You're right. This isn't just frivolous. This is malforming us and removing us from the will of the Lord, because we are coveting something that is no longer ours. And that is what we looked like at one point in our lives, or what we think we could look like, instead of just being content with where we are and what we have. And so, man, that was a heavy, heavy moment for me, and has really kind of made me reconsider, just the way I even think about it. So,
yeah, even as you said that, it's like so fascinating, because we've talked openly on the podcast about my health journey. And I remember kind of like at the pinnacle of it, when you like first hit that like 100 pounds lost moment. I think I've been there now for like almost a year and a half. But when you first hit it, like I remember looking in the mirror and being like, "Ooh, I do not know this girl." And
I remember that.
Yeah. And it took some counseling sessions, if we're being honest. And just like, it took a lot to be like, here, is she the same person? Is she as valuable? Like, why is she more well received in rooms that like 100 pounds ago wasn't received in rooms or in conversations?
Yeah.
Or at least it appeared, right? Like, I mean, from my vantage point. And so even like as you're talking, I'm like, oh, I can see how the longing of who you once were could put you in a position where you're not even valuing who you're becoming in an effort to go back. I think for me, it was kind of the opposite of like, oh, I have to get to know her. And then in getting to know her, I was like, oh, she's no different. She just looks a little different. And therefore people's views of her might be different, but who she isn't different. And what's hard with this aging culture is you're like, hey, but your worth and identity haven't changed. Like maybe your forehead wrinkles are gone, or your top lip's not moving, but like who you are in Christ, like wasn't altered by y'all. In a true moment of honesty, I've had one time, you can't drink through a straw. Never again will I ever. I did it one time, because sometimes I smile big and you can see anyways, it's an insecurity. And I was like, I'll fix it. It's no big deal. Yeah. I was in a church meeting with like ladies, and I drank through a straw and it just like ran through my mouth. And I was like, I need to know how people are. Anyways, here we are. It's my top lip moves. But it was so much, Liz. It was in that season of though, like wrestling with who I am. And I was like, sure, let's like try this. And then I was like, this is not the answer to the problem. The answer is like getting to know who Christ has created me to be. And I think, Rebecca, even as you were saying that covetedness language, I was like, oh, I do think some of us are wrestling with who we are becoming, and we're turning to the world for the answers as opposed to the source of our identity.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Okay. Well, I know we got to start to kind of wind it down, but I do want to ask you this. You talk about in this article, and I just thought this was so fabulous because I feel like I'm doing this. You talk about aging visibly as kind of a form of resistance. Tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've touched on a lot of it. I think aging visibly is saying, I think it's part of saying like, I am still valuable, whether I look young or look like what you want me to look like or what everyone else looks like or not. That aging visibly says, I have collected wisdom, and I am standing in who I am and am willing to share that. I think it allows us to kind of go with what you were saying, Liz, to plant our identity not in what we look like, but in who we are and what we're here to do, and the wisdom and the stories and the context that we have to share. And so aging visibly signals that we are going to stand on our feet and we are going to be who we are and we are not going to allow people to determine what we look like or who we become just so that we can fit in. Rather, we're going to let people sort of fit around us and with us and walk with us. And it's daring to be different and intimidating, and sometimes even threatening to the status quo or toxic systems, because you're saying, I'm not going to let this cultural influence be my whole thing or shape who I am. I'm going to find that somewhere else and allow that and believe that who I am today is as valuable as if I was compliant or inexperienced. But actually, my experience and my unwillingness to comply with certain things is what makes me valuable in this space. Um, and so it's kind of just an outward way of signaling um, those things that you are inwardly really standing on foundationally, I think.
You go, girl. You can be part of our pinky swear if you want to.
There you go. I know. I did go last week to get my hair dyed.
I will never stop. I'll never stop.
And I was like,
yeah.
I got carried away. I didn't intend to cover my grays. And then it just sort of happened. And I was like, oh.
I fully intend to for the rest of my life. Probably not for the rest of my life, but like
at some
for
point
at least...
I'll let it go.
Yeah.
But I think that's even someone like me who's very aware of it, like it happened. So I think there's a sense of like, in that way, I'm like, I'm giving myself grace for getting carried away or wanting to do this. But like we've been talking about before, I turned 40, and in a lot of ways I'm like, and after leaving some relationships behind in my life that had sort of fragmented me, I'm sort of like rediscovering who I am at this age. And so I was like, this is part of that, even though I did cover gray. It's not because I'm ashamed that I'm 40 or that I'm ashamed that I have gray hair. I've had gray hair since I was 15, off and on. So
sure,
it's not about that. But I do think, allowing ourselves the space to be who we are in how we look and in how we act is a particular kind of freedom that a lot of women don't get, and we have the opportunity. So I think we should take it.
That's good. Yeah, I am. One of the ways I am part of the resistance is I tell people how old I am. And I know that feels like a really little thing, but that is something that I can almost feel people's surprise when I say, well, yeah, I'm 51. And so blah, 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 and people are always like, she said her age. It's like, yeah, I did. I'm 51 and I'm very neutral about it. It's not a big thing to me. I don't, on the inside, I still feel like I'm 20. I still wrestle with a lot of the same insecurities I wrestled with when I was 20. And when I do start to kind of bemoan the visible aging that, particularly probably over the last 5 years, I think that I've seen, I try to remember that, what, when I had perfect skin, when I was 21, 25, 30, 35, I wasn't any happier. I was just insecure about different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think being human is a big part of that. Is there's always going to be something, and for the most part, unless you are Kris Jenner and have the world's most expensive plastic surgeon, most of the time, I don't know that people look younger. I think they look worked on. And we're in such a cultural moment that values authenticity. I think one of the ways that we can be authentic is to just be our age and be okay with it, Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, we end every show with last words. And I know you've been with us before, but we just kind of like to just give you a chance to say anything you didn't get to say, anything we didn't ask you during this conversation. So I'll just ask you this, Kate. What do you want to leave us with today? Like what are your hopes for the article, and what do you want us to be thinking about as we move forward?
Yeah, I think I want more women to know that their witness matters, whether they are teachers of the Bible or passers down of wisdom in a space, or even just an observer who sees the patterns in the people and have been looking. Um, you know, your voice, your choices, your presence is valuable in and of itself. And so, um, yeah, I'll just leave it there, that I think part of why I wrote this is that I wanted women to know that actually it is in this stage of their lives in which their witness carries so much weight, and that's why it's intimidating to a lot of people. That's why it's threatening to a lot of things, and that's a source of power that we can root into and take hold of and stand in, and I think that's really important for us to do.
Love it.
Yeah.
What about you, Liz?
I think Kate, you alluded to it earlier and then also talked about it kind of in a fun manner when we were talking about our hair. But I just hope women are like thinking about the decisions they're making. That I mean, I too am covering up gray hair, but it is a conscious decision. Like if you were to engage over a cup of coffee, I could tell you why I think my hair extensions are really fun and how I got there. It wasn't necessarily like a peer pressure moment, but I just wish we would like engage in the conversation with one another, and that even in our own, as we're making some of these anti-aging choices or decisions, that it would be a thought process and not like, well, this is what I've always seen done, or this is like a quick decision, that it would be something we would like give thought to. Because I think, at least for myself, as I've thought about some of the decisions I'm making, it's allowed me to wrestle with the Lord about who I'm becoming and led to bigger conversations. So my encouragement or challenge, I guess, would be to like maybe rethink some of the decisions that we're making and how we got there.
Yeah, I think that's so good. And I think the Lord just wants you to be okay where you are.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the Lord wants you to be free from that fear. That's what he's speaking over me, that, child, boy, you're focusing on things that are only going to enslave you, because once you hit 50, you are never going to look like you are 25. That ship has so sailed. And I've always kind of joked that I like to pick battles I think I can win. And the aging one is just not a battle I can win. But what I can do is I can delight pouring into those coming up behind me. I can just thank the Lord for the lines on my face, because those are smiles and that's concern, and it's a life mostly well lived. And so, I think that if this is a particular struggle for you, and it is for so many of us, because culture is always telling us we're not enough, we need to be more this, more that, more this, more that. If this is a struggle for you, I think the Lord wants you to have freedom in that area. And then also, if you are someone who is fully invested in this fight, we love you. I honestly, at the end of the day, I don't really care what you do with your face. I just want you to have peace in the Lord, and I want you to know that your worth in no way, shape, or form rests on that. And so, yeah, I think that's where I would leave it. So we're grateful for you, Kate.
Yeah,
thanks for having me.
And thank you, friends, for listening to Honestly, though. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, share on your favorite podcast platform or your favorite
even
social
YouTube.
Media. Yeah,
YouTube.
That is true. You can go hit that subscription bell on YouTube by searching Honestly, though, and finding us there. We're glad to have been with y'all today.
Yeah, thank you so much. And most importantly, if no one has told you today that they love you, to steal our friend Nika's words, we most certainly do. But more importantly than that, the God who counts every hair on your head, even the gray ones, is absolutely crazy about you.
Peace. Oh, I beat you.